My name is Dr. Vere Perotti. I am a 17-year veteran with RIT, and I teach classes in digital entrepreneurship and building web businesses. I have been part of this conference for many years, and I'm happy to see it grow each year and attract new people. So I think we're in for a great day, all in this session in particular. I'm going to be moderating the panel and asking some questions at the beginning of the session, and then it's on you. I really want you to have a fair amount of opportunity to ask questions of these distinguished panelists. So I think maybe the best thing to do is to have them introduce themselves. We have John Eades with Vere Sandals, we have Paul Solt with Artwork Evolution, and we have Alex Opalka with MotionSavvy. They will tell you a little bit more about their background, and then I will lead through a set of questions just to get the conversation started. And then again, it's your responsibility to keep it going. So John, can we start with you, please?
Sure. Good morning. My name is John Eades. I am a RIT grad, Industrial Design 93. Spent most of my career in footwear design. Stand up so you guys can see this. Spent most of my career in footwear design for athletic shoe companies, and about 6 years ago, I, with a partner, started my own brand called Vere Sandals. And our goal was to create and manufacture sandals here in the United States. So that's what we currently do. We did a Kickstarter campaign about 8 months into our process to raise some capital. We're pretty successful from, early in the Kickstarter game. We were considered one of the bigger successes. We got about $56,000, ran into some problems in the fulfillment side of that, and that's mostly what I'll be focusing on today.
Don't give away everything at the beginning, John. You're going to leave them. They're going to leave if you tell them everything.
Oh, there's plenty more details
all right,
to share.
Good. Paul.
All right. Hi, I'm Paul Solt. I run a company called Artwork Evolution out of the incubator. It's at Venture Creations, just down the street. And I raised probably over $100,000. I've had 2 successful Kickstarter projects, each of them raising over $47,000. And I kind of know what helps and works with a project. I've given talks at Bar Camp on Kickstarter, as well as publishing a blog post that I can share or tweet out at the conference if you guys want to read that. So I've used Kickstarter to moderate success to fund the development of iPhone course materials.
And Paul Toole is an alumni.
Yes, I'm a computer science alumni. I did the BSMS program.
Do you just tweet, or do you have paper too?
I have a website. You can print it out if you want.
Very digital. And Alex.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Alex Opalka. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of MotionSavvy Incorporated. We develop sign language translation technologies. We've actually done 2 different types of crowdfunding and crowd investment, primarily using the WeFunder platform, and we just launched our Indiegogo campaign on Tuesday, which we've almost raised, just close to 3,000 shy of a fourth of our amount out of a 60-day campaign.
Good. You're an alumni of RIT?
Oh, no, I'm actually still a student. I just started my 6th year, technically, out of a 5-year program, just because my startup, I actually had to move out to San Francisco for a year, and most of my startup is still out in San Francisco through an accelerator program we had, so.
Great, thank you. Yep. Okay, so you know a little bit about these guys. I want you to try to rewind the clock for each of you and talk about this decision that you made to pursue crowdfunding. At some moment in time, you were thinking about ideas and you decided, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to actually put something out there. And I wonder if you can go back in your mind and remember those moments and why you decided to do this, what seemed like a good idea in there. John, why don't you start us off again?
Sure. We'd been going for a little bit. By that point, we'd raised some capital through friends and family. And we were a little bit of a different Kickstarter campaign at the time. It wasn't digital, it wasn't music, it wasn't art. It was for production. There's not a lot of production, certainly at that time, on Kickstarter. We needed more capital, and someone brought Kickstarter to our attention. This was 4+ years ago. I'd never heard of it. We looked into it. We spent some time putting together a video. We were only looking for about $12,000, and we went past that pretty quickly. But from the standpoint of why we did it, it was purely to raise some additional capital. It was all relatively new to us at that point.
Good. And Paul?
I looked at Kickstarter because I wanted to fund some creative projects. I had been investigating and sort of doing a lot of research as to where I could potentially raise money. And it was more about what we could do, not necessarily if it was going to be Kickstarter or not. I knew that I wanted to do Kickstarter because it just seemed more professional looking with their layouts. And we had looked and we found existing projects that had received funding for course materials. So we looked at those, and we also looked at how people were funding apps and app development. I make iPhone apps, so that was another candidate for something to fund. But when I looked at the numbers there, most of those projects were for $5,000 to $10,000, and a lot of them don't get successfully funded. So it looked a lot harder to raise money there, and that's why I moved into the educational space, which is kind of what I've been doing at RIT. I've worked as a student instructor in the CS department, and I've worked as an adjunct professor in the CS department. And I have a pretty good teaching background, so taking teaching and applying it to iPhone apps really allowed me to play with the new technology and teach people how to get started. And so that's why I chose Kickstarter. It was also because I needed money. Without the money, I would have had to get a job with someone else. So I've been running my own company for about 4.5 years, and it's all self-funded. It's from winning prize money at Shark Tank or Tiger Tank. It's from doing contract jobs with RIT and another company. That got me going along with the app sales that I had. But the app sales aren't enough for me to survive, so Kickstarter was sort of a stepping stone to keep doing what I was doing.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Alex?
So, my experience was a little bit different. We actually are not using the crowdfunding platform for financial reasons. We're using it for market validation. We are lucky enough to have been funded by some of the same people that funded Facebook. Peter Thiel made $3.4 billion off that $500,000 investment he made. Founders Fund and SOS Ventures actually invested in us after our accelerator program. So that being said, we don't need it to actually have the capital because we've raised venture capital funding as well. And also through our WeFunder, which is, it's very similar to Kickstarter and Indiegogo, except it's for shares of the company or interest or convertible note. So that being said, we actually had a lot of massive interest in it. I mean, pretty much we jumped from 150 or so to like 1.4 million overnight just through that platform. And we couldn't accept, most of that money just because it would have given away way too much of our company, and we did not want to do that. And the downside of that is it being that we didn't know the people that were investing in us. So we only took the money from people who we could actually meet with and actually have a conversation with and actually do that. That being said, we launched our Indiegogo platform on Tuesday, which actually was for the market validation. And that means that we put up an initial price up there, and we wanted to test, will people buy this product? This proves to our investors that what we're saying is that, $4.99 versus $2.99 versus $200, what will people pay for this? And that we did a lot of market research, but that's really different from somebody actually pulling out their wallet and saying, here's $200, I want the product. And so we did that with the idea at a $4.99 price point to actually try and see if people will pay for it. It turns out the first day we only got 3 orders, and we realized very quickly from constant communication with the deaf community that they cannot afford to pay $4.99 for our product up front. So we immediately reevaluated and actually switched back to a $1.99 price point. So that was the biggest feedback that my company has had, is that we were too expensive for the average deaf person. Because you have to remember, something like 58% of the deaf community actually does not have jobs. It's actually significantly higher than the actual normal, regular community.
Okay, great. So I'm thinking from the point of view of somebody that doesn't have a lot of experience in the space. We talk in the digital entrepreneurship class early mornings about lean startup methodology. Some of you may be familiar with that. But the concept of validating and testing ideas and changing, maybe your price, maybe your product, whatever, is deeply embedded in lean startup methodology. So I see how you're using that sort of thinking, perhaps. I had a question in my class just yesterday about sort of the mechanics of getting listed, of putting up a crowdfunding campaign. The question from one of my students was, oh, it says you need a tax ID. I don't think I have a tax ID. What should I do? So maybe you could talk a little bit about, is it just simply making a video of your head saying, please send me money? Or what goes into a crowdfunding campaign? You all have had kind of success, certainly success in this space. So tell me about sort of the mechanics, the logistics of getting started, and then maybe some success, some keys to success. Let's go crazy and start with Alex this time.
Yeah, so like I said, we actually had money to dump into our campaign. So that being said, you know, we dropped a whole lot of money on a very, very high quality video. I mean, the production set was just absolutely, it's more like a movie, like you know, you would go and you'd actually go see the movie theater. I mean, it was way bigger deal than we thought it would be. So we actually were able to engage Sandwich Media to make that video. We were able to engage everybody we needed to. So we actually hired our own PR firm to actually advise us on the process of the campaign. So when we incorporated our business, we actually got the tax ID, we got all the businessy stuff that we needed to actually collect money on the platform. And from there, we hired the video, the social media experts, and the PR firm that has experience in the actual crowdfunding arena and pre-orders in particular. I don't know if anybody's heard of Tile or Coin. They're bigger campaigns. They sold out in 40 minutes. I mean, they sold their pre-orders out, meaning that they just could not support the number of pre-orders that were coming in. And we're starting to face that issue now where we've got so many people contacting us and we don't have enough manpower to actually handle all the traffic that, you know, we're starting to get. But back to the original question, with it being that we actually had the money to actually go out and seek help,
right,
and actually get somebody who knows more about it than we do, because, you know, none of us have degrees on our team. None of us is even a business major. You know, it comes down to that.
Terrible.
So, I mean, it was just, you know, that whole process from start to finish took about 3 months. So we've been planning our initial Indiegogo launch for quite some time. And that being said, we initially engaged, and the initial, you know, process of starting your campaign, it's all about building your customer list without them really knowing it. So you're not actually asking them, you know, would you buy this, would you buy this, would you buy this? It's more, you know, people have started to reach out to us, when is this available? And you kind of, you know, say in the spring, in the fall, in the winter, you stick their email onto a list. And that way you have initial customers who showed interest in buying your product when you launch your campaign.
Right. Well, your MotionSavvy is in a little different situation, I think, than many people that use crowdfunding, for the reason that you already had money to apply to the process. Mm-hmm. So let's hear from one of the other guys to tell about sort of the different scenario.
I guess one thing that I did leave out in my initial introduction is, besides teaching at RIT, I was also teaching at the time on Skillshare.com, which is an online course website. It started as an in-person thing where you could just organize a course and each of you could pay $50 to learn about iPhone apps, and I taught over in one of the conference rooms at the incubator. So that was sort of my initial experience with the online teaching. Through that, I probably made, I want to say, close to $46,000 with Skillshare, and that was because I was one of the first courses there. So that helped fund some of the audio and video equipment that I purchased. But I just want to point out that you don't need to hire an external firm to do your video. I think it's a great option if you want something really, really professional, but you can raise lots of money with just a simple iPhone. So I used my iPhone 5. This isn't my iPhone 5 right now, but you can just use an iPhone camera and the microphone, and those are good enough to get going. There's this little glyph mount that allows you to put it on a little tripod. You can point it at yourself. You can look at yourself as you're talking, and just try to get a little bit more real. It's hard to talk in front of a camera. I do it all the time, and a lot of the times you come off really dry. We're just like blah blah blah, and so like it's really challenging. Like it seems like it would be easy, but you have to put yourself into that conversational mode that you're in, and that's hard to do when you're in the spotlight. But I used the iPhone 5 for my first video. I had a high quality mic. I would recommend. There's some USB mics that you can get. They're like $120. They're way better than the iPhone mic, but as long as you're close to the iPhone, you'll get good sound quality. So if the iPhone's like right in your face, it'll be good enough. If you need to get back a little bit further because there's more people in the shot, just use it's an Audio-Technica, I think it's a 2020. I can look it up at the end of this talk. And then my second video I did with a Canon 6D, which is a pricier camera. That was around a $2,200 camera. It takes more work when you start working with a higher quality media, so it takes more time to make sure that your shot looks good, that you're in focus. So there's more challenges, but you can get a more professional looking video, and then having B-roll is really pivotal for that.
Well,
so
you better define what that is, I think.
B-roll is just shots of you like holding your iPhone app that you want to make, or your prototype that you're working on, or looking at people talking about the idea and sketching out stuff. Looking at me on camera is probably not the best. I have a tendency not to blink, so then I look like I'm just sitting there and I'm just talking from memory, and it's really hard. So when you have B-roll, you could be like, oh, look at this cool app, and it's a lot more interesting, and you can tell a better story because you can show what you want to make. So in terms of mechanics and logistics, that was for my video. I think the video is really important. You want to plan for like 1 to 2 minutes. Don't do anything longer than that. Keep it very focused. Tell a story. Telling a story is the biggest thing. I've filmed so many videos. For this last Kickstarter, I probably have 35 takes, and probably the first 30 are me just like not blinking, staring at the camera, and looking awkward. And beyond that, it was about 3 months of planning for my first Kickstarter. I might be exaggerating that just by a month or so. But it was a lot of prep work. I wanted to know what the reward levels would be. I wanted to know what the text copy would be, what the title, what the blurb, what the link would be even. So having your initial title is going to dictate what the link is. And then the project's living. Then you have all these rewards. You can add rewards to a lot of these platforms like Kickstarter. You can add rewards as you go. So don't put all of your eggs up front. So that's kind of, I guess, some of the logistics.
Would you quickly explain the rewards concepts, just in case there are people that don't know much about it?
All right, so you want to treat, and my project was pretty much validation that people wanted to learn iPhone apps. So like what he did with their project, that's what I did with mine. And rewards are essentially a way for you to sell something. It can be kind of a service or an online or a digital asset, or it can be a physical good. You want to pick rewards that you're going to be able to actually do the work and fund the development, and I know that you've experienced running out of capital on that. I'm scared to do a physical reward on Kickstarter just because I know it's going to cost a lot of money to do all the development and design. I would strongly recommend that if you're not making t-shirts, don't give t-shirts away. No one cares. So that was our approach to rewards. We are all digital. I teach iPhone app courses. You can download, you can stream, and you can get all my stuff all digitally. I don't need to send you t-shirts because you're not interested in t-shirts. You're interested in how can you make an iPhone app. And so that's what I did. You want to think about the rewards. So we spent a ton of time thinking about the price points for our rewards. And the initial project, we had lower price points. The second project, we had higher price points. So to give you an idea, the initial project we had $29 got you one course, and then if you spent up to $99, you got all 13 courses. So It's a lot of content. I think that it's important that you also don't overcommit. 13 courses was a lot. I have 5 of the original courses done, but then Swift and iOS 8 came out, and so now I'm putting the additional courses that were sort of extensions of my project on hold until I can teach the new language and then go into the more advanced topics. So.
Good, thank you. John, how about you? Oh, well, maybe John will tell us about this pesky tax ID thing.
Not much to it. we were already incorporated by the time we did our
Oh, was that
Kickstarter
true for
campaign.
you when you got started? Were you incorporated?
I only have a DBA. It's $40 at the county clerk office. Like,
Doing business as DBA, so if you haven't started your business yet,
yeah.
then you need,
I don't know if you need that though.
you don't, I think you can use your social security.
Yeah, I
number
think you can
if
use your
I
social
don't think
security.
you can.
Oh, you can?
No, I think they changed it where you have to get a tax number.
Okay,
With
yeah,
Amazon
that's-
payments?
okay.
I don't know.
We'll noodle that
You'd
one
have
around
to
and get
just
back to
create an account. It's not hard. You just
Right.
make a test project. You say, okay, I want to make an Amazon account, and you can do it.
Go ahead, John, please.
Our approach was a little bit different. We, I think within the course of about a week to 10 days, we had heard about Kickstarter, decided we wanted to give it a shot, shot a video on a borrowed camera, and put it together on iMovie. I mean, it was, you know, it was, I had no idea the term for B-roll, but it was heavy with that. At that point, we were still building our physical plant, our physical factory, so there wasn't much to show. We were able to do some video of some of the machines that we did have in operation at that point, but we were still waiting for some to come in. We didn't have any cutting dies. We didn't have a lot of things in place at that point. We were trying to raise capital towards that. So our approach was pretty quick as far as putting it together. We were complete amateurs and had no idea what we were doing. But the point that you brought up that was important to us is that we do have a good story. We're trying to bring manufacturing back to the U.S., and that was what we were pitching on the site. So we did have prototypes of our product that we could show, and we were really trying to tell the narrative of bringing production back from overseas and starting it here in the U.S., where we took over an abandoned manufacturing facility in our hometown down the road in Geneva. And so we were able to play up the emotion of that, bringing manufacturing back to our hometown. And that was really important for us. You mentioned the ability to deliver, and that was where we ran into our problems. We had figured that, like I said, we were only out to raise about $12,000, which is what we needed to get this last piece of machinery up and operational and get going. And we ended up with $56,000. What we did was we set our levels at for product. So for X amount, $25, you would get any of our woven sandals. For $45, you would get one of our leather sandals, and there were some other levels in there, including some where you could upcharge, pay a little bit more, and get it personalized with your name laser etched on it. We found out that our prices must have been pretty good, and they're within a couple dollars of what we sell them at retail anyways. But we were overwhelmed with the number. We had figured we were going to do 200 to 300 pair throughout all this, and we ended up with 1,100 pair. And we really weren't set up from a production standpoint to be able to handle that. And that's where we were in some problems. So if we were to do it again, and we would, because it was successful on the front end, we would put a cap on our rewards. And I think that's maybe the biggest lesson. It was available, okay. And we set a cap on some of our higher end ones, and we got crushed at the lower end. So,
yeah, very good. Okay. I think in each case, you know, when we choose the panelists, it makes more sense to choose really successful crowdfunders, and they all are quite successful in that regard. In each case, they put this thing out there, sometimes with dramatic production value, and sometimes with a borrowed camera and very quickly throwing it together. And somehow word caught on, and people started to offer you money. And I'm wondering about that process. How did people become aware of your Kickstarter campaign, your Indiegogo campaign? Are these your friends? Are these total strangers? How did total strangers get involved? So tell me about, I don't know if it's marketing the campaign or whatever that caused this unexpected growth. And whomever wants to answer, just jump right in.
for us, it was kind of cool to watch because it was kind of how social media is supposed to work. We started out by just sending some emails and Facebook posts to our personal friends, and then we'd watch the orders come in and we're like, oh, I know that guy, and oh, cool, he signed up for that, and that's cool. And then next thing you would know, we'd see names pop up that we didn't recognize, but we could trace it back to one of our friends, and within a week, it was just this circle much larger than we had ever thought imaginable.
So Facebook helped to spread the
Facebook
news?
and email and Twitter at that point. We just put out quick ones, hey, come check us out, please. And it was mostly friends who started doing it and then sharing it with their friends, and it went from there.
Great, word of mouth, absolutely. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, so like I said previously, we started building our list of people who we were interested in paying for our product very, like 6 months in advance of the actual campaign. We didn't know when we were going to start it, but we were like, we should start building this list now. That being said, when we actually chose the date, we actually started to engage our Facebook groups, which we had 5,000 or more people on, and that's exploded since we've launched. I mean, we get like 15 new people or 15 messages asking about our product every minute nowadays. I mean, I log onto Facebook and it's just crazy. So we built this massive list, and it's all about how do you pitch the campaign to them in that initial email. And on top of that, how do you target those customers through Facebook ads, through sources that they may already see? And the biggest is, how do I get news actually written about us? We actually were lucky because our product is something that's very social, I don't want to say like social message, like helping deaf people. That's huge for us because we are all deaf ourselves, so we know the product. We're able to grab the attention of people like, we've had articles written, TechCrunch, Mashable, more recently Forbes, which will come out soon, Wired, which came out Tuesday. I mean, I was at all these places in New York City just last week doing interviews for our products and showing them demos and getting the word out about what we're going to be doing. And it's really leveraging connections you have already to get those interactions, to get those interviews, because it's very difficult to do a cold approach and just email TechCrunch about a product you're developing. They're probably not going to hear about it. And that's why, in addition to our product being so attractive to them, we hired the PR firm because they had those connections. They had the connections to TechCrunch, to all these big, news outlets that could, they could email and say, we're supporting this group of students. They're all deaf. They're creating a product that's helping the deaf community communicate with their hearing counterparts. And that's when people immediately, our PR firm said they had the largest number of responses, so much so that they could not fit everybody in before the campaign started. So I said it was the largest they've ever done, and they've done successful campaign one after another.
Great. And Paul, how about
Quick question on that.
Yeah.
Would you mind disclosing how much you spent on the PR firm, or how much that costs? Like, if they're going to all start a project, like, does it make sense for them to spend that kind of money, or do they need to have capital?
Yeah. So, like I said, we had the capital to do that.
Are we talking like tens of thousands, or are we talking like a couple thousand?
Tens of thousands.
Okay.
That being said, our video for Sandwich Media, that they actually did that. That video, the way that they structure some of their deals is that you can either choose, an upfront, very high cost, or they'll take a small revenue share out of your crowdfunding campaign. So they'll do everything up front at cost for them. So they're putting, $40,000, $50,000 into their video, full production set, everything, hiring people, actors, things like that. They'll pay that up front on the hope and the dream that your campaign will be successful, and they'll be able to make more off of your campaign than they put into the actual campaign. So that's one way they do things, but there's different models depending on what PR firm you go to, who you're engaging with. They'll have a variety of things, and it's very interesting. We spent a lot of money, and I'm talking more than $100,000 on our campaign. And I mean, we're only asking for $40,000, so we know we're not going to make that money back. It's just really gets the market validation to show to our next round of investors that people are going to buy this. We've tested the price point. We got X number of people that bought our products before the campaign ended, even though we're only asking for this number. And that's what investors want to see, because I'm sure none of you have had former startups. This is probably your first big experience, and it was for us, is that we were all so young and so inexperienced that there was really nothing that, investors can really say, okay, they've done this before. And that's part of our campaign, is that you have to show traction for if you're in that situation just like we were. And we were just so lucky that we were able to get SOS Ventures and Founders Fund to fund us initially, to get us to that point. And now we're at the point where, we've got people that are buying our product. We can show those numbers to investors to raise a big round, 50 million, 60 million, 70 million, whatever it is, next round in a year or more, to actually, handle more large scale, actual, purchasing large production runs and things like that.
Awesome. Okay, can we hear from Paul, and then I'll take your question? Sure. Paul, just about the growth of the campaign and how it spread, et cetera.
So I think the most important thing to think about when you're looking at something like Kickstarter is that they have a network of people who have credit cards on hand ready to pay for things. It's not like it's a Google App Store and you've got all these people, I want a free app. They have their credit cards associated with their accounts, and they're going to pull it out and pay for something on a whim. That said, that's really important for a successful Kickstarter project, in my opinion. I don't think you need to have a network. Everyone talks about you need to have a big network to pull from. You just need to have some kind of online reputation, and you can build that up from blogging. You can build that up with an email list, having a website to just collect info. What I would suggest for you is, if you want to go down this route, start a blog. And then on your blog, you can put in a little widget to collect email addresses. Blog about what you're working on, and you might start to get people interested. Now, granted, you're not going to get 50,000 people to sign up for your mailing list on your first day. You probably won't get that in your first 5 years or 10 years. It's going to take a long time to get an audience. But if you start today, you can start building up that audience. And I think that's really important. I wish I started collecting email addresses earlier, because it is an effective tool when you want to go to raise money, because you can find the people who are actually interested in what you're doing. In terms of how my Kickstarter project worked, I didn't have a big email list for my first project. I actually didn't think it was going to succeed. In the first 18 days, it was on target for maybe $6,000. My goal for both of these projects was around $10,000 a piece. So I wasn't asking for a ton of money. I just wanted enough money so I could keep paying rent, so I could work full-time on the course materials. And that was sort of the idea of Kickstarter. I just wanted to keep doing what I was doing. I didn't want to work for Apple. I didn't want to work for Microsoft. Those are two companies I've worked for before. So I do have some credentials as going through the co-op program, so I could say I worked for these big companies, which sounds great. But when you work for those big companies, you don't do a whole lot of interesting things. You're not as creative as you want to be. You're just a peon. And so I run my own studio, making apps, teaching people, doing what I want to do. I can't do that if I work for Apple. I can't publish apps if I work for Apple. It's just not what I'm allowed to do on my own time, even if I'm not at Apple's campus working. So my network was pretty small for this first Kickstarter. I would say that I probably drove less than $2,000 out of the $47,000 that I raised on Kickstarter the first time around. The rest of it came from Kickstarter. And so what's really important about your campaign, and I think this is where the money is that your campaign isn't static. It can change. And throughout the lifetime of my project, I was making changes. My first video was awful. It was probably like 4 minutes long. The angle wasn't very good. I didn't look very good. I probably wasn't blinking. I don't think I had any B-roll. It just wasn't, it didn't tell a story. It went into the technical details, and that's one of the problems that you face when you're trying to convey your thing. That's why the 30-second elevator pitch is so important. If you can convey what you're doing very quickly, you can capture people's imagination. You can capture, and that's where the power is. And so we looked at these course materials because we'd seen previous projects get funded. One got funded for $150,000, another for $43,000, another for $20,000. So there's a lot of people who are interested in learning, and they're willing to pay more than an app. They're going to pay hundreds of dollars for course materials if it's something that they want to do, if it's something that's going to better them and give them a career option. So with that said, the second time around, I probably drove close to $20,000 worth of signups, and that's because I had a mailing list. My mailing list is around 900 people. Not everyone from the list is going to buy, but you do get a lot more momentum when you have people behind you. I don't have a huge mailing list like you were talking about, but I didn't really need it. I did have a reputation from teaching on Skillshare.com and Udemy.com, so if you want to teach, those are two great sites where you can upload your own courses and sell them for whatever price. So that's sort of my marketing strategy. And then when you think about the campaign, it's a living project. You can add new rewards, but you can't take a reward away that someone has backed. You can't change the text on Kickstarter. I don't know how Indiegogo works. But when you create a reward level, let's say it's $150, which was my top level for this last Kickstarter. Once someone backs it, that text is set, and so you can't change it. But what you can do is you can add a new one. So if you want to add new content and make it very clear, just add a new one. So I added a new one because when I launched, I had 3 courses, and by the end of the campaign, I was promising 7 courses, and that was actually selling a lot better once I added the new text. So change the rewards and make it very clear. Either refilm your video, which I've done numerous times. I refilmed this video twice, but I actually changed the B-roll a 3rd time. So it's 3 different videos that I had, all just trying to make it more concise, to really convey what I'm doing. And I'm doing this on a budget. Like, I'm not spending thousands of dollars on it. I don't have a PR person for my Kickstarter campaigns. That's something I'm looking into now for my course materials, but it's not what I started with. So again, you can start very stingy if you need to. Just use an iPhone camera, borrow audio equipment. You don't have to buy everything.
I think you could argue that that may have been the intent of Kickstarter and other crowdfunding platforms, is to enable people to get started with very little resources. There was a question, if my vision is good enough, is it Kurt?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So I'd just like you to take a minute. I'm picking up on your young and inexperienced comment. I'd like you to take a minute and pat yourself on the back. Right? Pat yourself on the back. Because it used to be, back in the day, that in business school we'd sit in a classroom like this and we'd talk about how things are in the real world. And I think it's great that now those of us in the rest of the world come back here to find out how it really is. So congratulations on that. It's a wonderful twist, and I'm glad you're sharing. So in the real world, when we do a project, good practice is to talk about what worked and what didn't work, and try not to step in the same thing twice. I'd really like to hear what the worst mistakes were that you made, or if you didn't make any mistakes, what's the worst one you've heard about other people making in this space?
Gentlemen, tell us about a mistake. I think
My videos have always been mistakes. They've been awful. And if you really want, they're all on YouTube, so I can probably link to them and write a little post up about how awful they were. And you can tell me how awful they were. But I think what's most important, and this is with everything I do, like, I'm a perfectionist, and that's crippling. We sat on this project for too long. 3 months to design a Kickstarter project is a lot of time. Unless you're actually making like a hardware thing, like that's a lot of time to spend on video production and text and trying to figure out your rewards. I think the most important thing you can do is just get it out there. Don't wait. Do the 90%. Whatever 100% perfection is, you're not going to get that because you're going to waste too much time getting to that point. So just shoot for 90% perfection. Be comfortable with not having the best video. I wouldn't have money if I didn't put a bad video out, and I wouldn't know how to improve it if I didn't put a bad video out. So a lot of the failures or mistakes are correctable, I would say. Now, not everything is correctable. it's hard. So with the marketing, I say that I didn't raise all of the money on my Kickstarter, and it was through Kickstarter's network. It's really important to understand that if your project does not become popular on Kickstarter, you will not raise more money. So the ability for your project to become popular is really important, and so you have to really tell a story. A story is so important. That's why the video, I think, is really pivotal, and trying to get a video that works better. When I first launched my Kickstarter, there was another guy who messaged me, similar to me. He's sort of a developer. He was running his own sort of educational thing. And he's like, "Your video is shit." I was like, okay. Like, that really lit a fire under my ass, and I was like, okay, what can I do to make this better? And I think that's so important because, like, when I look back at my first app that I launched in the App Store, it was my graduate research project, but the user interface and the interaction was awful. But if I didn't publish it and I sat on it for another year, like, where would I be? So it's really important, like, just get something out the door. Don't try to make it perfect, but do try your best, and your best is going to improve over time. So with these videos, I go back and I refilm them. I try to cut them down. So I went from having like a 4.5-minute video down to like, I think, 2-minute video for my first Kickstarter. And then I took a 2-minute video and brought it down to 1 minute or so, or 50 seconds. So it's constant improvements, but it's all about iteration. It's just like with Apple's iPhones. Like, it's an iterative design. They're not going to give you the biggest screen on the first version. They have to get something out the door because they don't know, when they first launched it, they didn't know what people would want necessarily. They have an idea, but until you actually test it, you don't know how to improve it. So get something out the door, don't sit on it forever, and then just fix it. You can fix the video, you can change the video that's posted on Kickstarter, and it's so much better when you do, but you need feedback from the people. You need to see, okay, are people interested? And so the popular thing that I'm talking about on Kickstarter is when more people are backing and when people are giving you more money, what happens is on the search page, if you're searching technology, you'll see that my Kickstarter is near the top. And that's really important for getting traction and getting people, but they're really going to bite on it harder if you have a good video, if your message is very clear from the get-go and it connects with them on sort of a story level. So I think that's very essential to doing it. So just improve what you do, but put something out there as quickly as possible. The last thing, your Kickstarter project can fail. That doesn't mean you're a failure. That means that you can learn from the failed project and what to do better.
Thanks, Paul. Let's get to the other two. Let's hear some. John, you've already hinted at some mistakes that were made. Maybe you want to say a few more words. Maybe Alex has one, and then we'll take more questions. Go ahead, John, real fast.
Sure. The perfection thing wasn't a problem for us. We knew it wasn't going to be perfect. Like I said, we had no money when we were putting this video together. So if we had tens of thousands of dollars for a PR firm, we wouldn't have gone to Kickstarter. We would have used it tens of thousands of dollars. So for us, it was being unrealistic about what we could deliver. It was over-promising was our big problem, and that was the big lesson for us too. In hindsight, we absolutely should have set a cap on how many rewards we were able to produce and been realistic about that. But it's hard when you check in and you check your updates and more people are in and you get excited and you get caught up in the moment and you get a little greedy about how much is coming in and you think, well, we'll figure it out. Well, don't do that. We got a lot of negative publicity out of it. We had a lot of problems with it. It took us years to fill all the orders once we got into it. So that was our biggest mistake by far.
Thank you. Alex?
So like I said, our campaign was all about market validation. So we set out to make mistakes, to put those price points up that, probably wouldn't work. And so we had errors and mistakes that we knew that were going to happen. That being said, some things that we didn't want happening, our email servers went down on Google's end. And I didn't receive any emails for Monday or Tuesday. So that's emails from our PR firm saying, are you ready to launch? Here's some last minute thoughts, maybe you should change this perk to do this. And that was not good. I mean, we had a lot of people, when our email finally came back up, we saw a lot of emails from people who emailed us saying, is this real? Do you have any news that we can watch a video of the product in action? And, those people were delayed putting their money in because our email is down. So long story short, make sure your sites are working fine, under high traffic, it can handle all of that. Make sure your emails are working, because that's, those customers will email you, try and get in touch with you. Because if your email comes back to them as, the email address doesn't work, then that looks kind of sketchy to them. So that being said, it's all about prepping, make sure everything's going to work, doing a very quick launch to actually, we launched, for a short time we launched at like 3 in the morning, for 15 minutes to make sure everything was working. And then our email servers went down, so we closed it back up and then launched it during the end of the day with an alternate email after we realized what was going on.
Okay, perfect. Let's try to get some more questions. Ladies first, right over here.
I don't know if you already talked about this, but I was wondering, you're putting out an idea that's new. Did you guys have to protect yourself somehow? Because, somebody in Kickstarter, anybody can watch what you're doing, copy you, or do something else for you. Did you have to come up with like a patent? Did you have to have something in there that, how would you protect yourself from somebody taking that idea, especially if what you're selling is an idea that could be done by somebody else, If there was something that you had to do?
Go ahead, Alex, sure.
Yeah, so about a year ago, or we'll say I think it was closer to 8 or 9 months ago, I filed my first couple provisional patents on our technology, because this is something that Microsoft tried to do and they relatively failed. And it's something, that they eventually tried to outsource to China, which they had something, but it wasn't what we were doing. And our idea extended upon that to make it a lot more mobile versus, theirs was a basic Connect system, which was this clunky, technology that really wasn't practical in everyday applications. And we came onto this and we said, Microsoft's trying to do it, They can outspend us, 1,000,000 to 1 if they wanted to. So we said we need to get the provisional patents out quickly. And for full patents, from start to finish, the process can be very expensive. So the provisional patents are relatively cheap. You can write your own patents and get somebody to review them, for pretty, cheap pricing. I think through our firm and SOS Ventures connections, we were able to get it for under $1,000, and that was just it was because it was friends of SOS Ventures, they're lawyers, and it worked out very nicely because they were able to do that. And in some cases, some legal firms are actually willing to work for a deferred payment. So that being said, when we were strapped for cash over a year ago, we actually were able to get some people to work for us, for deferred payment, which means that they will work for you for free until, either they'll deferred payments, which means they'll make you pay later on, or they'll take like 0.5% of your company and do all the work for free. So your incorporation for everything. And that's something that we actually, we pursued initially, but then we got funded, so we were able to then just pay them very quickly. And
it was a product that you had, but if it's an idea, can you patent that too?
Yeah, so we patent several across a variety of different components of our technology. So we had the idea of a mobile sign language translation technology. So we originally started out with, you attach it to your computer, it's just a USB device, but then we realized very quickly that having it attached to a tablet, a phone, is much more beneficial for the deaf community. So that's where we ended up putting our patents into. So developing the idea of the sign language mobile on a tablet, phone, all the different components that fall underneath, like the case that can attach a controller to the actual phone or integrate it into phones and tablets, all of that stuff is covered under our patents. And for a from going from the full provisional to the actual filing of the patents, because you have a year to actually get to a relatively working prototype once you file the initial provisional. To to bring in a legal firm on full-time to write the patent, do all that costs about $10,000 to $20,000. But if you do the initial writing yourself, you have all the materials, you've got all the designs drawn up, you've got, you patented everything you can possibly think of for the provisional, that price goes down because you've done a lot of the hard work, the research, you found other patents that could be close, that could potentially infringe on you, you infringe on them. You've done all that research yourself, and you can cut down on the time because when it comes to patent writing, really the actual submission to the U.S. Patent Office is really only $500 or so. But the actual process of paying for a legal entity to actually look over your patent, make sure it's all good legal-wise to cover you, that's where it comes in, number of hours they have to take to do that. And if they have to write your patent on top of that, then, or redo portions of your patent, that's very expensive. So trying to get the research and most of that done under your own self is beneficial for you.
That's great. Yeah, I'm concerned we have a lot of questions in the room. I want to make sure we get to them all. Paul, did you guys want to add anything to that, or should we
Doesn't apply to me.
just keep rolling? Hey, Paul.
Can you just answer that?
Sure.
You guys,
It doesn't apply much.
Yeah, that's
to
what I
me,
figured.
so-
Paul, how about you? Were you concerned about sort of people picking up your idea?
No.
Not really? Okay.
I just want to say real quick, with patents, like, you're talking about pouring tons of money into the legal system. And I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I don't claim to be an expert here, but it doesn't mean anything to me. Like, I am a creative person. I make things. I create new things. I'm passionate about what I'm doing. I'm not passionate about patents. Software patents don't make sense to me. It's a waste of money, in my opinion, from that perspective. I could see what he's doing as something that he really needs patents to protect him, but then you really need the capital, and he's got some capital. I don't have any capital to work with to hire a lawyer, and you guys don't have capital. So skip the patent, just get something out there. The whole point of Kickstarter is you're validating the idea. You're trying to see, okay, are people interested? What's the point of spending $10,000 on something that when you do the Kickstarter, you raise $50? Like, it doesn't make sense unless you want to pour your life savings away. So don't pour your money down the drain just to protect an idea. Ideas are worthless. It's really the execution. I'm very good at teaching. I'm very good at making apps. And I can make something that's, in my mind, good. But at the end of the day, are people willing to pay for something? And if not, then you have to do something else. And you're putting your ideas out there, yes. People can steal them, yes. But the people who are passionate about the idea are really just you. Other people aren't passionate about your ideas because they have their own ideas. And so you've got this thing called time, and you only have so much time in a day to work on something. If you already have your own ideas and you see someone else's idea, it's a good idea, but you have good ideas. Like, are you going to work on their idea just because you think that you can steal their idea and be clever about it? Like, it doesn't work like that from my perspective. Now, I'm talking more from like a small idea phase. Like, once you're maybe a big corporation like Microsoft, then maybe you want to have the lawyers. But until you're at that level, like, don't worry about it.
Good.
Thank
you.
Real quick,
Yep.
My background's in product, and we've done some patents before, and some of the things I've designed. And if you want to protect yourself early on, write your idea down really well, like you would submit it for a patent, mail it to yourself, and don't open it.
So that you have it.
So that
in
you've
time
shown that
stamp.
you
Yeah.
came up with it, and as long as you've been active on that idea since that time, at least if it comes to a point where you have to defend yourself and your idea, you have that as a timestamp.
I see a number of questions. Don had his hand up first, and I'm going to try to remember the order that I see. Go ahead.
I'm not even sure if Al can answer this, or maybe you can.
Okay, great.
I've noticed the similarity between successful crowdsourcing campaigns, that the product or service is independent of geography. And a lot of students come to me and they want to open a coffee shop or a daycare center, and so that would only be of value to people in the local geographic area. Do you think that crowdfunding can be used for that, and is there a certain way to hook people? Do you go for people beyond the geographic area, or you just say, okay, it's going to be a small campaign?
I think maybe John might be the best one to answer that, because part of the story was the Geneva manufacturer.
It was, and we got a lot of our support early on from our area, but it did spread really quickly to people who were just interested in Made in USA, which no one else is offering that. But there are a couple of people in Geneva who have started a distillery and a brewery and they did Indiegogo. I don't know the details on that, but it was very local, and it was, one was a local downtown, microbrewery, and they funded it, so it is possible.
So it is possible.
If you can work alcohol in there, that helps.
Yeah.
Yes, sir, go right ahead.
Yeah, I have one point and a question. The value of a patent is strongly based on your ability to defend it.
Right, which costs a lot more
If you don't
money.
have the money to defend it, then also, if the product is going to be sold overseas, or especially manufactured overseas, you have a real difficult problem with intellectual property protection.
Sure.
Because then you got to register in every country,
Mhm.
and even if you register in every country, if it's manufactured in a country that doesn't respect intellectual property rights, then you're out. My question ends up being, what aspects do you have for the investor in terms of managing investor expectations, and from the investor's point of view, what should they be watching out for a Kickstarter funded program?
And by investor, you mean an individual out there in the world?
An individual out there
Anybody.
who's going to invest $5 or
Thank you.
50,000.
Okay.
So what exactly is the question?
What do you have? How do you target what you're doing to the investor, or how do you?
Well, you have two aspects. One is the viewpoint from the investor's point of view. What are they really going to get out of it? How do they protect their interests? The other aspect is from the person who's receiving the cash. How do you manage appropriate investor expectations? You don't want someone beating on your door or email box or whatever, Twitter or whatever the deal is, if you're not delivering what you promised to deliver in the time frame that you promised to deliver. So how do you manage your investor expectations?
I'll throw it open. Go right ahead, anybody.
Yeah. So in terms of managing investor relations the relationship between an investor and somebody who's initially backing your project on a crowdfunding platform or crowd investment platform there's very different relationship. If you are having institutional investments, it's almost as if you're getting married to them. You want to have people that you can work with. Our investment groups are fantastic. The reason we went with them was because they were one of the best for helping startups of unexperienced people get to where they need to be. They run accelerators and learning on 3 continents. They're just a massive entity that helps startups become successful. Not just here's my money and we kind of want you to produce a product when you said you were going to do. And that being said, it's done through a variety of means. We send out requests for information 2 times a month. Do you have somebody that can help us with manufacturing on this specific portion? We need feedback on this. It's all about that interaction between yourself and your investors, your backers, and actually communication is the biggest thing. It's communicating what you're doing, what your timeline is, and then following through on what you said you were going to. Because if you can't follow through, then that's the biggest thing. And that's, they will not be happy with that. If you say, I'm going to have this, initial beta finished at this, this point, or in the fall of 2014, and it's not ready in the fall of 2014, you better be very, explain why. And you better be very, be very open about that. And the word transparent, and be very, transparent between yourself and your investors and your backers about what's going on in your life in terms of getting their product to them. And that being said, with the backers, when am I going to actually have this in my hand versus the investors is when is my money going to be returnable in terms of a value of what you're going to give me back. And 3 years down the line, 5 years down the line, when you actually sell it, how many users have you actually sold this to? What's their feedback been? That's the type of things you want to be telling an investor. And all investors have this expectation of a product that's going to work on the timeline you initially told them. And trying to meet that is the biggest thing. And when you do meet it, that's awesome.
Yeah, very good. John, you have some hindsight, maybe some retrospective thoughts on it?
From a the project management standpoint as far as dealing with backers. As I mentioned a couple times, we had a hard time delivering it. It took a long time. We did 25 updates. We tried to be as transparent as possible about the problems we were into, why we were running into them, what we were doing about them, and what the timeline would be. We kind of found that there's two kinds of backers: those who like your project, want to see you succeed, want to put some money into it, and if they get something out of it, that's really cool. But their intent is really to help you fund it. And then the other kind is people who treat it more as a discounted marketplace. We ran into a lot of those, and all they really care about is, when am I getting my product? When am I getting my product? And when am I getting my product? And it doesn't matter. They don't, we ran into so many problems along the way, and we're so overwhelmed by it that at some point we had to stop doing updates because no one wanted to hear it anymore. The people who were educated on it and knew what we were going through and accepted it didn't care anymore. They were going to get it when they got it. And the other people didn't want to hear any more excuses. And so we just invited people to, my partner Mike and I gave our personal email addresses and said, if you have problems, please come to us directly and we'll get on the phone with you and talk to you. And it was all about communication until we could fill it.
Matt in the front. Oh,
Could I just?
yeah, jump in real fast.
Yeah, communication is really important. You want to be sincere. So when you create the rewards, you set these sort of deadlines, and it's kind of hard because you don't know how long it's going to take, and it takes longer than you expect. So the initial deadline I set for my first Kickstarter was way too aggressive, and I wasn't working as hard as I should have been when I launched it. At the same time I was launching it, I had hired a co-op to work on a new game with me. So like my time was split between working on Kickstarter, managing all the emails, and then working on my own project. But what I want to say here is, with my second Kickstarter, I emailed every single backer who backed my project. So I have 500 emails I sent out, and then I got maybe 30 to 40% of the people to respond. So that's another, I don't know, a lot of emails to send back. And then some of those discussions go back and forth. But I think that's so important, especially when you've got a live project. You want to sort of set the expectations, you want to be open, you want to be responsive. It's hard when you're managing a lot of people. I use keyboard shortcuts all day long. It's the only way I can get through that many emails. So I use keyboard shortcuts for my email clients. I also use an app called Text Expander where I can just type a short key sequence like semicolon kick 2, and that gives me my entire Kickstarter link. And so it just replaces the text so that when I'm responding to customers, I can just be like, bloop, and then I'm done. So that's really important. And I was very open and sincere about my delays, about the things that didn't get done. I've run, because I still have part of the first project looming over me because I had all these stretch goals. I would recommend avoid the stretch goals, especially for the first time. Put them in only at the very end, but limit how much you do, because I have a few more courses to make for my stretch goals, and it's hard when you've got like this cloud behind you. And then the other thing is I offer refunds to anyone who's unhappy. I value customer satisfaction a lot, and I treat this like a sort of a product that I'm selling. It's a digital product, and I'm teaching people how to make iPhone apps. So if they're not satisfied, I'm not satisfied. And I don't want their money, so I'm going to give it back. And I have enough money right now to be able to offer refunds. The people in my current course, I'm actually teaching it live right now, so I've started my second Kickstarter course. I've created 101 videos since October 6th, which is a lot. Before I was happy when I was only making 10 videos a week. Now I'm making 50 to 60 videos a week. So it's a lot of time, and I'm spending 12 or 14 hours a day just working on content and then responding to emails. It's a lot to manage. And then I would say don't just say, oh, I'll just do an update, because the updates actually take a lot of time. So yesterday I did a Kickstarter update. It's my 20th update for this new project. I updated throughout the project when it was getting funded, and I'm still updating it. And it takes a lot of time to write these things. I'm not an English major, so I write a rough draft. I get the bullet points I want. I read through it out loud. I print it out on paper. I look for any typos that are glaring. I do have a copy editor that I could send it to, but I don't know. I really wanted to get it out there because it had been so long since my last update, so it was like a week. And I wanted to update them on what was happening. And then that whole process, I probably spent 5 hours on that update email. And for you, it probably takes 5 minutes to read. But it's a lot of time. You have to find the images that you want to include. You have to find any of the issues that you're running into. So right now, I was trying to do the course materials live, but there was some things that I wanted to fix from the previous, so I sort of delayed the new content for the second half of the course because it's a 31-day course and I'm 15 days into it. And so I just wanted to make that clear to them. Not everyone's taking my course live. Some of them are just starting it today. So it's all about communication, being honest, offering refunds if they're not happy, which means you can't spend all the money that you get because otherwise you can't offer refunds.
Yeah. Okay, great. Let's get Matt in here. Maybe we'll try 2 more. Go ahead.
You guys maybe alluded to it a little bit, but I was kind of wondering how you picked the site that you picked. Is it like that some cater better to different products or services, or is it just the one that you knew? Or?
Great question. Kickstarter versus Indiegogo versus
how did you
refund.
know which one you wanted to do?
I like design, and Kickstarter's design looks sexier.
We know the people that run Indiegogo, so that's how, kind of got in the back door very quickly that way, is we got their support and their review on our actual campaign before we launched it.
Perfect.
It's the only one I'd ever heard of.
Okay. You had a question, yes, sir.
You mentioned that the planning process was about 3 months. Could you briefly describe what are the most important steps that go into it?
So the first one was 3 months. The second one was about 2.5 weeks. So I trimmed down the amount of time I spent. A lot of the time, the second time around was all video. So I said I did 35 plus takes. So it's me sitting there recording myself for 4 minutes, being like, oh, that's crap. And then you get to a point where you do the editing. So initially I used iMovie, like John, but then it was hard. I didn't know much about it. I took a course through Skillshare.com on Final Cut Pro 10 or Final Cut Pro X. And that really helped me learn the shortcuts to make a video faster and what goes into it. So the video was pretty time consuming. I probably spent at least 2 weeks both times just working the video. And this is just me doing the video. I don't have, sometimes I have my girlfriend like helping me a little bit, telling me to blink and like give me like some cues. But for the most part, it's just me sitting in front of a camera doing a bunch of takes. And then in terms of the planning, there's a lot of research you can do. So Kickstarter, unlike Indiegogo, I don't know if Indiegogo has changed, they publish tons of statistics and numbers, and you can be like, oh, if you reach the 30% mark of your funding, you're 55% likely to succeed or something like that. Those numbers are cool, but they're not really going to tell you how it is. And so what you need to look for are projects that are similar to what you're doing and see if they're funded. And if they're funded, see, okay, what's their video, what's their text, what's their description, what's their updates like, why do people like it, what are people saying when they comment on it. I think it's so critical to understand the language that people are going to use when they talk about a project. So just looking at all the research, looking at the funding they get, the non-funding they get, and then looking at how people fail. Like, I considered myself somewhat successful with the Kickstarter, and so I was offering critiques on some people's Kickstarter projects that I saw that were related to mine. And one guy, I suggested he double his price point. So he was selling it for $49. I told him, double your price point, add some extra stuff, and you'll get more money. So he went from making close to $20,000 all the way up to $54,000 for his Kickstarter. Now, that was great, but the problem that you run into, and this is getting away from your original question, is this goes back to the communication thing. He didn't deliver, which was a big no-no, and I'm totally not happy with it. You can look him up on Kickstarter. His name's Taylor Beck. I don't know if he died. I don't know if someone mugged him and stole the money. Like, I don't know what happened, but he did not deliver the materials. He kept promising things. The day would come, nothing. The day would come, nothing. The day would come, nothing. That's what you don't want to do. You want to be able to explain why you can't do something. And all he had to do was throw together some videos on how to make iPhone apps, and people would have been happy, but he didn't. And then he had this big show, and so, yes.
Okay, I think we have to wrap up for one of time, but let me first say, Vere Sandals, you can find at VERESandals.com, Artwork Evolution, artworkevolution.com, and MotionSavvy.com. Please join me in thanking these three generous gentlemen.